Hey friends, this is in continuation with the yesterday's video that I presented to you, and that's related to Now Experience UI. So basically what we covered so far is installation of Visual Studio Code, and using Visual Studio Code to connect to ServiceNow instance and working with ServiceNow applications, custom applications in Visual Studio. And I also demonstrated how to sync your code from Visual Studio to ServiceNow and from ServiceNow to Visual Studio. That's what we covered so far. So as a next step towards our journey to the Now UI experience, learning Now UI experience, we need to understand, we need to learn what a web component is. So that's what we are going to do today. So I'll walk you through quickly as to what's a web component, and the reason why we need to know about web components is that that's the fundamental technology that's used by ServiceNow for Now Experience UI. So without further ado, let's get started. So I'm going to present this to you today. So web components. Let's learn about web components today. So what are web components? So web components are nothing but reusable custom HTML tags, right? So what does that mean? Reusable. So the HTML code that you have in your HTML files, right, that can be reused. Those can be created as components and then reused in your HTML file. So you can create your own custom tags, in the sense that the most common tag would be a P tag, right, a paragraph tag. So the way that's a built-in tag provided by HTML. But then using web components, you can create your own tags, custom tags, and you can use those custom tags again and again in your HTML file. So that's the beauty of web components. So yeah, define it once and use it in your HTML page as many times as you want. So that's the whole concept of web components. Again, it helps in code reuse and hides unwanted complexity, right, from your HTML code. That's the whole purpose of web components. And in ServiceNow's context, I would call web components as jelly reincarnation. I mean, if you are aware of jelly, right? I mean, I'm sure you are aware of jelly because that's used by ServiceNow for building UI components, right? So that's a outdated technology, and I would say web components is kind of a reincarnation of jelly for creating UI components in ServiceNow. So let's go ahead and see what we have. Let me correct that typo here first. All right, so let's go ahead. So there are two different types of web components. One is a standalone component. It's also called as autonomous component. What that means is it basically doesn't extend any standard HTML tag, right? It's standalone. It doesn't extend the functionality of existing tags, right? That's a standalone. Now customized built-in. So this is basically extending the functionality of existing HTML tags. Like for example, if you want to give more meaning or more functionality or more meaning to a built-in HTML tag, so for example paragraph tag, that is P, you could do that using web components. So that's the second type of web component that you can build. Now what I'm going to do now is I'm going to quickly walk you through an example, because if I start telling you about the theory about web components, you'll be as lost as I was when I was reading it. So I thought, let's make it easy for you. So what I did is I created a sample example for you. The first example that we will see will not use web components. Okay, it will not use web components, whereas the same example, which is not using the web components, will use the web components, and that will be presented as the second example for you, right? So the same output, but with web components and without web components. Let's compare it. So I have the code ready. We can just go to the code straight up. So the code is right here. So I'm using W3 schools for this. So this one that you're looking at right now is the example which doesn't use the web components, and this one, the same output. As you can see, the output is the same on the right side, right? The output is the same for both, but the code is different, and I'll let you judge at the end of this video as to which code is easier to maintain, easier to read, right? So that's your call, and I'm sure your call will match mine, because I think that's a obvious call. Right, so let me quickly walk you through this HTML file which doesn't use web components. Very straightforward. This is the CSS, right? So that has been added here. Very straightforward CSS. We have a wrapper whose position is relative, right? We have info class. We have defined info class in CSS, and all it does is gives this, it defines this part, right? This info thing. As you can see, the color is yellow, font size is fixed, width is 200 pixels, and so on. So that's the definition of info class in CSS. And then I have icon. The icon has this hover field added to it, right? So yeah, so that's our CSS. And in the body we have a form tag, right? We have added a form. In the form we have two fields, first name and last name, right? So this is the first name, and this thing that you're seeing here, right, is the code to show this thing, the info icon. That's that code, and it's again very simple. We have defined the wrapper class at the top in CSS. We have defined the icon class at the top in CSS, and we have defined info class in the CSS. So all it does is it creates this thing. I added that thing, that icon, info icon, and the second field in the form is the last name. And again, as you can see, we added that info icon again for last name. It's just that we changed the parameters, right, so that right information is shown. The first one says enter your first name here, and the second one says enter your last name here. Assume that we had around 20-25 fields on the form, and we wanted this info icon against each of that field. So in that case, you will have to repeat this span code, right? The thing that's between span, for all the fields, 20 fields. Imagine the size of the HTML page just because of that repeated lines of HTML code that you'll have to write to show this info icon. So now let's go to web components. So we're going to web components here, and the output is the same. What you see here is this, instead of the span block that we saw here, the span block has now been replaced with this custom standalone web component. This is an example of standalone web component. We saw that there are two types. One is standalone and another is custom built-in, right? We customize the built-in tag. This one is not that. This is basically the first one, the first type, which is standalone. So it replaces so many lines of code with just one line of code, right? And even though these are shown on 3 different lines, that's actually just one line of code, right? So just one tag added there. So more readable, less lines of code in HTML, easier to maintain, definitely, right? We are reusing the components. So that's what is a web component, and I think I'm going to end today's video here. The idea was to just to give you an idea about what's a web component. We'll jump into the details of this code tomorrow. I'll walk you through this code, this example tomorrow, to show you how a web component is created, right? So that's for tomorrow. So that's it for today. I hope you have a good rest of the day, night, evening, wherever you are in the world and watching this. Thanks for watching, and let's meet tomorrow. All right, good night for me, because it's night for me. So see you guys. Bye bye.